What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 52 here on season number 2. And today we are getting into the long-term mix on Stash. These videos are for educational purposes only and not meant to be taken as financial advice. So make sure that you always do your research. So all the mixes on Stash are going to be extremely good. And this is because I believe there's good diversity on those specific mixes. For instance, you're going to be exposed into bonds and then have some cash equivalents and then also have those stocks. And so the super conservative mix is going to be about 80% into bonds and then 20% into stocks, where on like the new long-term mix is going to be 80% into stocks and 20% into bonds. And so I really like that about the mixes. This mix, like I was just saying, is going to be the most risky mix out of the bunch. So let's go ahead and look at the long-term mix. So this is the long-term mix on Stash. As you can see, it's managed by iShares. And the fun website is here. The ticker right now is AAOI, and it does pay a dividend of 1.72%, which we'll get into that a little bit more. And the top holdings are going to be other ETF like the S&P 500 ETF or the International Stock ETF and so on and so forth. So when you go to it down right now, it says that I have currently $20.14 with a 14% total return. So I've invested $20 in there so far with a 70 or 0.7% return. The top holdings again are going to be all these holdings. So 37% into a S&P 500 ETF, and then a 31% into international market ETF, and then 16% into bond, total bond, and then emerging market 8.9%. Bond, another bond is about 3%, and then a mid cap ETF at 2.1, small 1.27, and then 1.2 in black cash fund treasury SC agency. So that's going to be like cash equivalent. Let's go ahead and actually take a look at the actual website. Right now the price on that ETF is going to be $54.71. It did go up like 1.1% yesterday. The expense ratio is 33%, but actually the net expense ratio is 25%. I'll get into it later, but basically they give you back a 0.8%. They basically exist to give you an aggressive exposure to the market while still being diversified, and basically they want this to be like, in essence, the only ETF that you need to hold to be completely aggressively diversified in the market. And as you can see, the total return for the 1 year is 20%, 3 year 8.5. That's because it did have a slight downturn in 2015. We'll get into that here in a second. And then for the 5 year is 10%, and since inception 11%. So I like that growth is pretty good. Here's the expense ratio breakdown. So 25% for management fees, acquired fund fees and expenses, it's 0.8, and then they give you a 0.8 for fees waived, and that leaves you with a 0.25%. Top holdings again are going to be right here, which are just ETFs. The only thing that I would like to see differently done in this ETF is maybe open up a little bit of room for a REIT ETF. That would be nice to see a little bit more exposure, maybe into some real estate. But other than that, I like the overall setup on the actual ETF. Here's the exposure breakdown. So 53% to the United States, 7% to Japan, and so on and so forth. You can see as you move down the line. But let's go ahead and take a look at the actual fact sheet. So this is the growth over the past probably since inception. I would like to see them beat their benchmark. Right now their benchmark is set at 20.12%. The 1 year it was at, they hit 20.04%. So they're almost spot on. It would be nice if they did break it by like 1% or something like that, but I guess they have good calculations for that. As far as the top underlying holdings right here, you got BlackRock Cash Agency, which is 2.7, which like I said before, and then Apple, which is at 1.4%, Microsoft 1.6, Amazon is 0.75, and then Facebook, Berkshire Hathaway, Johnson & Johnson, JP Chase Morgan, and ExxonMobil. So these all these make up about 10%. So you can imagine that for a 100% portfolio, you're probably looking at around 100 or so, 100 plus stocks that are going to be in each of these in this specific ETF, because it has more diversity, because it has a ETF full of ETFs, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like an Inception kind of thing. This is the breakdown of basically all the ETF mixes that are offered on Stash. So this right here, the AOK is going to be AOK. Yeah, it's just AOK. AOK is going to be the conservative breakdown. So it's going to be 70% into bonds, 30% into stock. AOM, which is the moderate mix on Stash, is 40% into stock, 60% into bonds. R is going to be the aggressive mix, which is 60% stocks, 40% bonds, and then AOI, which is the one that we are currently talking about, is 80% stocks, 20% bonds. So that's the breakdown on every single one of the mixes right there. Here's kind of the breakdown in chart form. So all the mixes are going to hold the specific ETFs, the same ETFs. They're just going to be set at different percentages. And then the last one I just wanted to real quick show you is the breakdown year over year as far as percentage returns. So as you can see, 2009 they had like a 26% increase, but lately in 2015 they had a downturn of 1% and then back up to 7%. And then we'll see how it does moving into next year. Right now I only hold $20 into it, and we'll see where it goes from there. But let's go ahead and dive into the question of the day, which is, what's the spiciest thing you have ever eaten? And for me, it was honestly the Carolina Reaper or the Moruga Scorpion Pepper. Back in my like college days, I did a lot of I worked for a guy that grew peppers, or grew the super hot peppers, and we sold them online and that kind of stuff, and I tried every single one of them, and I tried them in hot sauces and all that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty much immune to spicy food. It would just take me a little bit to build up the tolerance again, but that was the spiciest thing that I've ever had. Anyways, I'll leave it right there. If you have any questions regarding Stash, Acorns, Robinhood, as well as general investing advice, business, Etsy coaching, post those questions down below. Don't forget to subscribe up here and check out my Stash Recap January edition. Check out this video right here. And as always, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it.